Welcome back to Come Heck or Hot Water, formerly known as Fahrenheit 140, the podcast focused on building resilience for water and the environment. I'm Robert Mace.
And I'm Carrie Thompson. Let's go figure this out together. How you doing, Robert?
I'm doing pretty good. You, Carrie?
I'm good. Yeah.
Cool. Staying salty?
Always.
Good. Good to hear.
So we're here to step in about midway through our series here on desalination in Texas. And today's guest is Bill Norris. He is going to talk to us about kind of the policy conversation that's happening right now. Bill is a consultant, well-known consultant on desalination. He's also the president of the Texas Desalination Association. So this is the man we want to talk to.
Yes. He knows a lot. I've known him for a long time. He's a great dude.
Awesome.
And he's a good person to go drink wine with.
Ooh.
Yeah, because when he was between companies, he had a non-compete clause, and so he became a sommelier. Is that how you say that word?
Sommelier.
Sommelier, sorry. I pronounced it in Texan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you did a good job.
So I brought a wine that he did not know what it was and where it was from, and he sampled it. So yeah, dude takes my wine and he hones it down to exactly where it came from, what side of the river. In France. Yes. It's like crazy. So I don't know if he does that with water.
Well, we'll try to ask him questions about policy and desal as well.
Okay. In addition to wine. Yes.
And then just for those of you that are just starting in with us, make sure you go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2. We talked about kind of an overview of desalination and what it is and some emerging efforts that are happening here in Texas, and talked to some experts from Israel on, how this all works. Next episodes are going to focus on ecology, some of the trade-offs here involved in this process, and the economic impacts. And then we'll wrap the season up by making some predictions about the future.
It's going by so fast,
I know,
isn't it?
I know.
Wow.
Learning so much. It's just a reminder too, we'll include links and resources in our show notes. Please go check them out, and always feel free to send us your questions or comments.
All right, Carrie, it's your turn to be the victim of the pop quiz.
No!
Yes. So last episode, we had Lihy Teuerstein.
I remember that.
She mentioned that standard potable water recovery from desalination is normally around 75 to 80%.
So wait. So standard recovery of water from the desal process?
Yeah,
so 75 to 80?
So when you're desalinating water, you don't convert it all to pure water. There's
the stuff.
There's 75, 80% is pure water, and then the other part is much saltier water.
Okay. Yeah.
Permeate versus concentrate is what the geeks would call it.
Love some geek speak. Yes.
So what percentage did she say IDE Technologies is able to recover?
Oh.
Standard 75 to 80. 3 choices. A, 85 to 87%. B, 90 to 94%. Or C, 95 to 98%.
Well, I remember being very impressed. So I'm going to go for the top one. The high end.
The 95 to 98%.
Yeah,
You are so smart.
I know.
The memory on you is just astounding.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you.
That's pretty impressive. Real impressive, actually.
It's incredible, honestly. It's incredible. Well, before we go any further, let me pitch it over to our producer, Sarah, to help us navigate the keywords for today's episode.
Yay, Sarah.
Thank you. So today we have TDS, and that is total dissolved solids, which is referring to the total concentration of dissolved stuff in the water. And the EPA recommends drinking water to be under 500 TDS. Fresh water should be under 1,000 TDS. Brackish is normally between 1,000 and 10,000 TDS, and seawater is right around 35,000 TDS. Yeah. Did I get that right?
And I'll just add, what you said was perfect, but I'll just add that it's like parts per million is the concentration, or micrograms per liter. But
look at that mastery of measurement.
And then just also note that TDS does also stand for Texas Disposal Systems, but this is total dissolved solids. Yeah, don't be confused.
That's right. This is a unit of measure.
Although both do deal with, anyways.
Yes.
Stuff.
Yeah, stuff. All right, and the next one is blended costs. And this is when a water supply comes from several different sources at different prices, and that cost that's blended is the ultimate cost or price of that blended water final product. How bad was that, Robert?
No, that was good. It'd be like if you need 4 dozen eggs, but the HEB is limiting you to 1 dozen, so you have to go to 4 different stores, and they're at different price points. And if you add all those costs together per egg and divided it by the total cost, that would be a blended cost.
And the next one is the Texas legislative session. So the Texas legislature regularly meets every 2 years from January to June. And we are currently in the 2025 legislative session. So if you would like to learn more about the water-related bills that have been proposed for this session, please visit texaspluswater.org and look for Leg Plus Water. We will also include a link in our show notes for that.
And then you can also Google Texas Legislature online, and Texas Legislature has an excellent webpage that allows you to search bills, do keyword searches. So if you hear a bill number, you can rush over there and pull it up and see the language, see where it's at in the process, and see if it's going to pass or not.
And for easy access, all of you listeners, we are going to include that in the show notes as well.
Cool. So next up is our guest, Bill Norris. Bill has a BS in civil engineering from Texas A&M University, a master's in civil engineering from UT Arlington. So he must be confused during football season. Although I think he's solidly an Aggie.
Does UT Arlington have a football team?
I'm not sure.
I don't. We'll get our research.
Lacrosse,
on that.
maybe. I don't know. He got his start with the City of Dallas Water Utilities and began consulting with KSA engineers in the 1980s. Since then, he's impressively started 3 desalination consulting companies, the most recent of which he actually created very recently, is Norris Water, LLC. He serves as the president of the Texas Desalination Association, which is an organization dedicated to advocacy and education of state and local decision makers, the public, industry leaders, and other stakeholders regarding water resources and desalination. Welcome to our podcast.
Yes.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's the Bill Norris. So,
the one and only. Thank goodness they broke the mold.
Yes.
So we know you're the president of the Texas Desalination Association. Can you tell us more about what that is?
So we started the Texas Desalination Association. I was one of the charter members back in 2011 during the drought. And prior to that, desal was not very cool. And I like to say I was desal before desal was cool, because there's a lot of activity before that time frame. And 2011 was a drought year, and a group of scientists and legislators, lobbyists, we got together and said we need to promote desal because it's got to be a tool in the toolbox. You know, it's really about educating our legislators, helping promote legislation to help streamline putting projects in, teaching people what desal is. I think we're beyond that point now, but I think the first 5 to 7 years I'd testify at legislature and say, well, what is desal? And dispel all the myths that were associated with it. We now have some legislation that hopefully has some power to it.
Tell me a little bit, and for listeners who don't know, Texas legislature is meeting right now, and I'm assuming you're actively up there visiting folks?
Yes, I testified the last couple of weeks, and one of the things that was voted on yesterday was Senate Bill 7. And Senate Bill 7 actually puts money into the kitty for new water.
Okay.
And new water is classified, I think, on the top of the list as seawater desalination.
Mm-hmm.
Brackish is in there too, but brackish has been around for quite some time. Seawater in Texas has not in full scale. Last year they put in, I want to say, $1 billion into the Texas Water Fund, but only $250 million went into new water.
Oh, okay. And this
So
is 7.
Yeah. So this year they're going to be putting in some more. We want to have we're fighting to put in annually a certain amount of money so that we can make a dent, because there's been no new water built sufficiently since 1972. One reservoir was built, and I don't think you're going to get reservoirs built like the Water Development Board says in the plan. They have all these reservoirs that are planned, but they're probably not realistic. And so you have to find something else to supplement the supply and the growth that's coming in. We're not stopping growth. We're not stopping the border on the north side, keeping people out. And we wouldn't do that, obviously. But we're in the same situation we were in the 50s in gallons per capita in water availability. So, and then we had that 8-year drought, and that's when they built 80% of the water supply in Texas in between 60 and 72.
Wow.
And so we have to do something different.
And you don't have to worry about a new drought of record with seawater desal, do you?
No, I don't know that we would deplete the Gulf of America.
Oh, dear.
I haven't said that before.
Yeah, it would take a hell of a lot of pumping to delete.
Right.
The Gulf.
And, you do have desalination has its own set of issues that it has to deal with as well, including, and just like every project has its impact, good and bad. Doing nothing has an impact. So we have to choose wisely and develop wisely. So we protect everything that we can, mitigate what it is that we have to take care of in the process.
So that bill that you mentioned, is that everything you hoped it would be, or are there more things that you're advocating for this session?
It's what we had hoped it would be.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that it's all said and done. No. What I like about it is they set up a committee that's to oversee this money, and not to say anything about the Water Development Board, but this is to help make the guidelines on how the money is going to be spent, whether in new water, and then decipher through the various avenues of, is it going to be a private public partnership, or is it going to be just a conventional way of developing the project? And we offered, when I testified, we offered our services from the association, which includes end users to contractors to engineers to scientists. We have a wide range of people on that board, and we offered, let us help you. And I just recently changed my job. I transitioned out at my age to be just a consultant to help entities put projects together without having a stake in the game. So, and I can be unbiased and recommend something. I don't gain from it. This way, if they need me, they can use me. If they don't,
okay, so you're kind of
I'll
like
go drink wine.
You can be you can be a purchasing agent.
Right.
Then,
I can help them develop the
neat.
criteria and review proposals and things like that.
You mentioned the Texas Water Fund. Can you explain more about what that is, and then why that is so important? Funding, financing projects like seawater desal.
Seawater desalination costs more than other new water sources. Maybe not more than a reservoir. If you don't have surface water, people will put in a surface water plant, but no water to provide to it. We are very limited by that. So if you compare it, if you look at the cost of our, quote, necessities like cell phone, cable, all that. Desalinated water is a fraction to that. So what does $5 get you? It can get you either two 1 liter bottles or 1,000-gallon container of seawater, desalinated seawater. So that put things in perspective. Mm. So as far as what the fund would do, would help incentivize putting the money into our future water supply, not just for the coast, but that if entity along the coast put a plan in and we're creating water coming down one of the tributaries, we could possibly free up that water rather than build a pipeline to Austin or San Antonio. Mm-hmm. Let's free up that water up there and then let the central area help pay for the desalination plant. They don't have all the pipelines to build. And so the Senate Bill 7 will put money in, and the committee that they form will help find projects that give you the most bang for the buck. And we emphasize that they should actually do some private financing. Let the private financiers finance it, and then let them build it, and then let the state water fund come in and buy down the rate. So all this risk is associated with the entity that's putting it in, and they make their profit, and they get it done in 2 years instead of 6, because time is really money in these days. And so if they can get it done and then allow the entity, a city, to come in and apply for a loan or a grant or a combination thereof, and then buy that rate down. So if they're going to charge them $6 $1,000, maybe they get that down to $4 $1,000.
I love the example you gave, the water swapping, because it's like, and I'm not going to say this is a deal that's happening, but so like Corpus Christi has a pipeline over to the Colorado River down along the coast. And so, for example, Central Texas could benefit from seawater desal that replaces that water to Corpus Christi, which then would allow Lower Colorado River Authority, whoever, to keep that water further up basin for the benefit of Central Texas. So yeah, it's a great point that you can have seawater desal benefits without a pipeline, right? Benefits that extend far inland.
30 years ago, I proposed to Las Vegas to build a seawater plant in Baja, bring a pipeline up through Nevada or up through Arizona and Nevada, and to let LA pay for it for the rights to the Lake Mead rights. Mm-hmm. And I got laughed out of town. Now they're trying to do it. Like sort of desal wasn't cool.
Well, that's a great segue to our next question, which is talk about how attitudes have changed. And like, what are you, it sounds like there's some excitement you're encountering now. I'm curious if you can characterize that. And
I wrote down some things. I says, okay, this is before desal was cool, all the stuff that was going on. And I know I listened to the podcast, and there was a question about what's the oldest desal plant. What was that?
I was thinking it was Del City.
I don't know when that was built. Do you know the date?
I want to say 66, 67.
Is it still in operation?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it's kind of like I forget what it is. Like I think every part of it's been replaced since then.
Well, how old is it?
It's old. Yeah. But yeah. It's one of the oldest. I don't think it's the oldest running plant, believe it or not, in the United States or the world, but it's in the top 5 oldest plants.
So before all in 2002, that's when Rick Perry had the initiative to do desal. Mm-hmm. And he was looking at seawater desal, and he took proposals from Corpus, Freeport, and Brownsville. Mm-hmm. And they all did feasibility studies, but then they funded the Brownsville project. But my first desal plant was 1988.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Almost.
Wow.
40 years ago.
Wow.
30 something. That was where we took wastewater and desalinated it for Fruit of the Loom, because our drinking water was not good enough. We would have to treat it or treat wastewater. Might as well treat wastewater. And then Brownsville Brackish in 1995 did a pilot. The first really sea brackish plant was 1997, Laredo Columbia Bridge. And I've given a presentation on how not to do a desal plant on that one. And I won't go into that. That's another story. And Laguna Madre's done 2 seawater pilots, 97 and I think it was 2002. So you got Rick Perry in 2002, just kind of I call him kind of the champions. And then he left and nobody really picked up the ball. Nobody's interested. And so we probably filled up the reservoirs. We had some rain and it just stops. We had ebbs and flows. Everybody gets excited when there's no water. When there's water,
it's like the
lose
hydro-illogical cycle.
It pretty much is.
Yes.
But the most cost-effective time to do a project is when you don't need it.
Right.
The most expensive project in the world was probably Australia, because they were totally out of water and they bent over backwards to do everything. And then when the drought was over, they couldn't afford it.
I also feel like we're reaching a point in Texas, particularly in Central Texas, where we're facing hardcore water needs even outside of drought. It's just the growth. There's it's like every week there's some new source of water, data centers, AI centers, chip manufacturing. Like there was a study that just came out by the Bureau of Economic Geology suggesting, 1 million acre feet or more of demand for hydrogen gas along the Gulf Coast.
I think 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was drought driven. Now it's partially drought driven and partially demand driven. And I think when Brownsville put their plant in 2004, they were about, if they didn't get a rainfall in 2003, they would have been completely out of water. Would have been none. And now they're expanding it. They expanded once and now they're want to do it again, because if it was such a bad idea, they wouldn't be expanding. Right.
And it seems like there's more brackish groundwater desal plants down there these days. I was looking at the board's map.
Yeah, so we got Brownsville, and then North Alamo has 5.
Wow.
Raymondville has 1. And I know North Alamo is, they're kind of quietly one of the larger. They have multiple plants, and so if you add theirs together, they treat more water than El Paso and San Antonio. Brownsville probably treats more than any of them because they utilize almost 100% of their capacity, whereas everybody else has got a lot of capital funds and expanded and don't use all of the capacity.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier about costs, and of course that's like when I talk to people, that's often the first thing. It's like it's very expensive, and then similar to what you said. The way I put it is like there's one thing more expensive than desalinated seawater. It's no water, and there are strategies in the water plan you look at that are more expensive than desalinated seawater. Like it looks like direct potable reuse is more expensive on a per acre foot basis. And then even some of the water conservation strategies, infrastructure-based water conservation strategies can cost a lot more than seawater desal. But I think one thing folks don't realize is that when you build a seawater desal plant, you don't turn off all your other water supplies and then just go straight to seawater. There's a blended cost there.
Yes,
so explain what that is.
It's a blended rate. In other words, I think when I was looking at Port Isabel, and if they were able to get some funding, they've already been approved for 25% of federal share. And I thought I said, if you're shovel ready, which I think this Senate Bill 7 says, if you're shovel ready, you're going to get priority. And I told them a year ago, you need to be shovel ready. So they're moving through the whole process to be shovel ready in another year, and with permits and everything in place. And so, and if they got 25% more, so that they got a 50 cost share and then low interest, I think I calculated about an increase in water rates of 7 or 8 cents. They're a little different because they're a resort community, and so they have all these high rises they have to provide water for July 4th weekend. If it's a drought on July 4th, they've got to have that peak capacity. And So the capital improvements are a tax bond rather than revenue bond. So the people that live there aren't paying for the reserve capacity. The people that are paying the taxes on the condos and things, they're the ones who pay the taxes. Okay. It's still a fraction. I think their full project without any funding, I think, would increase their tax rate from 6 cents to 12 cents. Mm. And the school's $1.
Oh, wow. Mm. Well, I'm curious.
Kind of puts things in kind of perspective as to, it does cost more, but so does any new water is going to cost you.
Yeah. What do you think the makeup is going to look like 10 to 20 years from now, as you look at other sources? What percentage do you
Let's
think?
Let's see, I'll be 90.
How much more consulting can you do, Bill?
Well, as long as I'm having fun with what I do, I'll do it for as long as people have me. I hope it's so I was looking since 1988, it's like, it just wasn't cool. Now it's cool, but we're behind. Mm. We're 20 years behind.
Okay.
And if we'd done these, even 10 years ago, the prices have more than doubled before COVID. Mm. It's insane how much things have increased. And hopefully everything's kind of leveled out a little bit, and hopefully, but we'll see. I can't imagine it going down much more. It can probably only go up. I've never seen things go down in price. I hope to see at least 3 major suppliers of desalination along the coast. And I think we can get it done. I think that I have really good working relationship with the TCQ, just because we've learned to work together since we put a project in at Rancho Viejo, because they had never done a concentrate discharge into a canal or in an open body of water. And they said, well, let's see what happens. And then we did the Southmost, and as long as you bring in anybody that is a stakeholder, environmental group, the end user, the customer, you bring them in, and you have an open book. You got to develop the trust in putting these projects together at the beginning. Don't wait till the end and say, well, I've already got it designed, I can't change it. Because they're your partners no matter what. Mm-hmm. And I think we even did the Texas Desal project. I don't know if you remember that. Funded, you're probably at the board at that. And that's where we brought a 2-day seminar, bringing all stakeholders in general. It was funded by Brownsville and Laguna Madre Water District, to bring in all the stakeholders and write out, okay, here's what my concerns are. And then everything just kind of dropped on seawater. But that's still great information. Mm-hmm. And so I think to answer your question, I think if we approach it together rather than a vacuum, I think you can get it done. I think we can't overlook the economy of brackish too. That's the easiest thing to treat.
Yeah, lower salts.
Yeah. Now, the ones we did in Alice and Katy, the water is really bad, 3,000 foot deep, and you don't need to heat up your water in your hot tub because it's hot. It's actually need to cool it down a little bit before you get in.
Okay, that probably requires extra treatment once it's gone through the hot tub.
Cool it. You don't want to put 110 degree water in the system.
Well, I've got a part A, part B question coming up, but real excited about us getting the first seawater desal project. It's always hard to be the first to go through that permitting process with TCQ. When it's the first time, they've been dealing with it, so they're figuring things out along with the folks that are building the plant. But as you mentioned, there's other countries that have employed seawater desal for a very long time. What could we learn from, Israel, Australia, or other countries, both in terms of technological application, but also just policies?
Well, I think those are two different countries. Israel owns the water. Mm-hmm. and it's a little different. They can do, and they have no other water. We've been spoiled by paying nothing for our water. We were spoiled by our previous generations who built all the water for us. And then our generations during this 20 years, we got to use all this. Mm-hmm. Okay, what are we going to do? We're trying to conserve it. You were trying to stretch it out, but we've not accomplished anything in those 20 years to help supplement it. So it's either behooves us to do it or our children and grandchildren. I told the House Natural Resources, I said, I'm almost 70. I've been doing this for 40 years. It may not affect me, but it's going to affect my children and grandchildren. And they're going to be hard pressed to try to correct what we haven't done. And so we better catch up. So the policy is a little bit different there. And theirs is need driven because they have no other choice. So I don't know what policies you could put into play. You know, I hate to say that you need a disaster to make it happen. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd rather not have the disaster to make it happen.
Right.
So in Australia, their disaster was a drought like we had in the 50s, and it was too late to help them. And now they spent way too much money for what they have. So I don't know that I want to learn from Australia. I do.
There is something to learn.
The technology.
Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't wait till it's too late.
Yeah.
And you don't know when that too late's going to be because you can't do these overnight. But I think we actually invented the technology during the drought. The U.S. invented the technology, and the rest of the world took it. Mm-hmm. We didn't do anything with it. Well, it was going to cost money. We ought to develop a kitty that people do it all the time on your gas bill or your gas tank where you so much goes to a certain tax. Mm-hmm. If they were able to start divvying that up and in the state participating in helping bridge the gap that an entity has, I think that would go a long way. Mm-hmm. I think that was proposed in a couple of sessions ago, and it got shot down. That we were going to do a tax, and nobody really. If you want to get reelected, you're not going to do that.
Right.
If you want to save the world, save Texas, you got to sacrifice. I think our powers that be need to sacrifice. You need champions, and so the people that I worked with on these previous ones, Southmost headlines in the paper: fishermen, sell your boats. Brownsville's going to kill the bay. You know, I mean, it was tough back then. So you have to have strong leaders that don't back down for all the people and worry about the next election.
So part B of my question is, what the hell is a Gewürztraminer?
A Gewürztraminer. That is one of my favorite German white wines.
Okay.
Sweet wine.
It can be. It's got a range. Gewürztraminer. Love the name of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does it mean anything? Gewürztraminer? I can't believe I said it right.
That was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
Which
means I didn't say it right.
I say Gewürztraminer.
Okay.
So, you know, you're in German territory. You better say it right if people in the area are listening to you.
Okay.
Not too much Gewürztraminers in Texas, so.
Messinahof is the first place I had
Yeah, they do.
That's right.
Messinahof out of Bryan, Texas.
That's right. Gig 'em.
All right. All right.
Well, going back to what you were talking about, some of that concern and fear about the fishermen needing to go ahead and move out of the bay, what are some of the regulatory hurdles that are out there, or I don't want to call them hurdles, safeguards maybe even? Can you talk about the regulatory
I really
environment?
don't think there's that many hurdles.
Okay.
I think you just do your science. It's different. It's different if you have an entity that's objecting to it because you do not want growth.
Mm-hmm.
You can't satisfy somebody that's just totally against it,
right,
or not in my backyard, that sort of thing. But from a concentrate, that's usually the things that concentrate or the byproduct from and it's clean water. You're taking all the nutrients and the pollution out of it, and you're actually discharging something that's higher in salt content, only salt. And so if you mix it together, you're actually putting the same thing back in. You're not putting in something that's going to kill the environment, but you do have to have a mixing zone that you don't shock a fish that swims by and it gets hit with from 35,000 parts per million
all
to
of a sudden
70,000. You
Right.
want to make sure the temperatures. You want to mix it in a short period of time. In the case of brackish, you're putting in back in brackish water. So in Brownsville, they gave us to measure upstream and downstream, and they gave us a discharge of like 15,000 TDS because we were treating 3,000. So after 4 years, you can increase that to 60,000 because you improve the quality of the water that it's going into, and there's fish swimming upstream and downstream. So we're all learning, and that's a learning thing from 20 years. We need to take a look at other seawater plants in Florida and California too, and see. You would probably hear objections over the 20-year period, but you don't hear only when they put it in. But you don't hear of anything that there's an issue associated with the plants, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You go back and find out, learn from that.
Is that committee that's being established going to include anyone thinking about these questions, or is that later in the
I don't know. I hope they took recommendations to help. And there's a committee, ad hoc committee.
Okay.
Maybe that ad hoc committee will select a permanent or semi-permanent board that will oversee that.
So you're with Norris Water now. You created Norris Water. I guess you are Norris
I
Water.
am Norris
Wow,
Water.
we're here with Norris Water right now.
And so what advice would you give to someone who's just beginning to explore, communities just beginning to explore seawater, brackish water desalination as a solution for their water needs? What would you tell them?
I would say go look on the board site. There's a guidance manual.
Texas Water Development Board.
That was put together and modeled after the North Alamo Donna project.
Mm-hmm.
The good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything from politics to discharge is in that book.
Like a case study on the project?
Yeah, we did. It's called a guidance manual for
Okay.
For brackish. It doesn't really include seawater, but it still has a kind of, here's a checklist. You have this and this.
Oh, cool.
I would say sit down with somebody that knows something about putting the projects together, and that would be honest and open with them. Like, okay, you need a champion.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be shy. You got to be able to, because people will fight you on it, and maybe they won't. Brackish, maybe not so much, but seawater is still an unknown to people. I've seen people publicize a pipeline that shoots out into the bay that is brown, and then they show all the dead fish, and that's when they don't want it. And there was one that's done for Corpus Christi.
Oh, wow.
And I showed it at our last Texas Desalination Association meeting. It was, I won't say who it was, but but that's the propaganda that you've got to go first. And I tell people you've got to have the answers before, you have to have the questions before somebody asks them. And you're prepared. So frequently ask questions, and then just help people put something together that's, here's what we're trying to do, get you a committee together. Hey, we need water. What are our choices? And you talk about it. It just starts with a napkin and kind of figuring out what you need to do.
Can I add a question on, Robert?
Sure,
Do you mind
sure.
if I add on to that? You mentioned earlier that right now the vision is sort of private sector takes the lead because of expediency and that upfront investment. Could you talk a little bit more about, is there a place for the public sector, for municipalities to be driving these projects? And just building off of what you were just saying, communities coming together and envisioning these things for their own community? Is there a place for that?
I think there's a place for everything. I showed Laguna Madre that private was not the way to go.
Why is
But
that?
in other locations, I think private is the way to go.
Okay. Okay.
It all depends on, your political structure depends on how big your facility is, how, I don't want to say, well, smart's not the right word, but
Like
you
sophisticated
have the
advanced.
capabilities
Yeah.
of operating a plant. Because a private entity wants to own it and operate it and sell water back. That's how they make their money. And so, or you could have a private entity do a design build, but they won't own it. And so it depends on how well qualified the municipality. Probably the smaller it is, but then a private entity doesn't want to do a $50 million project. It's back a couple of years, it had to be at least 200 million.
Wow.
So that kind of leaves, and so predecessor firm we were starting to look into doing, we could more than do a $50 million project and do well with it and do well by the client. But these companies are international and they have high overhead and it costs money.
Yeah.
But it's come down. I think there's going to be more demand. But I think one size doesn't fit all. Yeah, I think you've just got to look and say, okay, well, how do I do a matrix? It's okay, here's this, and you do some criteria and say, okay, this works for here, it doesn't work for here. And then you kind of look at the bottom independently and say, well, this seems like the best option.
Thank you. And I'm so glad you stuck with this, even though it wasn't cool till now.
I know. Well, I'm semi-retired right now, and so now it's becoming cool. I got to get back in it. I got to work more.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thanks so much for spending time with us and sharing your expertise. And wish you the best with the new venture.
Well,
and maybe we'll get together and share some good Gewürztraminers.
I could probably handle that.
What a great conversation.
Amazing,
with
yeah.
Bill. It's he's got so much practical knowledge, and it's good to hear he wasn't like driven out of Norris Leal. The rumors that I was starting his.
Stop.
So
apparently he's just busy running multiple empires at the same time.
Yes, this is true. But a fount of knowledge. He's done it. Has a lot of experience. So it was I guess maybe some key takeaways or some of the more practical aspects. The blended costs discussion. In his role with the Texas Desalination Association, kind of how they're looking at the discussions at the Capitol right now on the financing and new water, and how seawater desal fits into there were things that kind of stuck out to me. How about you? And the Gewürztraminer discussion.
Well, obviously,
yes.
that was sort of the height of the episode, I'd say. No, some of the practical things were just his observation about how we need to be thinking ahead. And we're maybe not already ahead. We're maybe a little bit behind.
20 years behind. Yeah. I think he's probably right.
Yeah. But no time like the present. And I think, like we talked about, there's never been greater awareness around water, I'd say, in Texas, and the awareness that we are running out. And I think, speaking about blended cost, I think also keeping in mind that there's a blending of resources that we have available to us, and to, it seems like desal is going to offer us another tool to complement the other tools we have, including learning to be a little smarter with our water and conserving water and creating supply that way.
Yeah. Also liked him talking about the potential for water swapping. So rather than having to build the pipelines inland, there can be some deals worked out to, keep the plants on the coast, which makes seawater desal that more affordable. You throw a pipeline on top of it that has to go 100, 200, 300 miles, that really increases the costs.
Yeah, and if we do it right, like we could really take a holistic look at the regions of Texas, and maybe there are some opportunities here for not only the ecology of these areas, but also water markets. I mean, to me, that's what makes me think about, wow, what a cool opportunity we might have to do some swapping. Well, maybe teeing off of that, it's kind of exciting that our next episode is with Paul Montagna. He's with the Heart Institute. They are located on the coast, and he's the guy. He's the guy to talk to about coastal ecology. So,
and he's there in Corpus Christi, where the plants that Bill's talked about, seawater desal plant Bill's talked about, have been proposed. I think at least one of them has gotten a permit from Texas Commission of Environmental Quality to start construction. And the other one, if they don't already have the permit, they're pretty close. And Paul has been involved in that. So, and Paul brings that, I guess, academic environmental perspective on challenges to seawater desalination. So it'll be great. You definitely you don't want to miss that episode.
You do not want to miss that. I'm really excited about it because I think, you do hear a lot about protesting, and I don't have a grasp on what that's all about. So hopefully he can help us understand some of the big questions, and looking forward to it.
Well, until next time, Carrie.
See you then, Robert.
Yes. And thank you so much for listening. Stay salty.
Thank y'all for joining us. We hope you can take this information with you into your daily life and help spread understanding of climate topics and some of the tools that we have to address these challenges that are coming our way.
This podcast would not be what it is without listeners like you. Be sure to check the show notes for helpful links and resources. We'd like to thank our funders, the Meadows Foundation and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Come Heck or Hot Water is a production of the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment, a research center at Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas. This podcast is produced by our science communications team, made up of Sarah Wingfield and Anna Huff. To learn more about the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment, we'd love for you to visit our website, meadowscenter.txst.edu. I'm Carrie Thompson.
And I'm Robert Mace.
No matter what comes, heck
or hot water,
we'll be here to explore resilient solutions for this changing world.
Thanks for listening.